I will be preparing a basil oil. Now I know you're wondering what a basil oil can be used for. You can actually drizzle it over vegetables, pasta, meats. What we're doing is we're going to prepare the basil oil today, and tomorrow we'll go ahead and prepare the risotto, because you've got to keep this basil oil in the refrigerator overnight. It says 8 hours, but overnight's a lot easier. And I have harvested my, actually two kinds of basil, my African blue and a little serrata basil. And the reason I did that was because I wanted a little bit spicier flavor than my African blue alone provides. So what you do is you just go ahead and you clip your basil, and then you bring it and put it in cold water and rinse it. The rinsing not only livens up your basil leaves, but it also gets rid of any critters that might be on your basil. Then on paper towels you just go ahead and take your basil leaf off from the stem. We don't want any of the stem. And after we do this, we're going to pat them dry. So I'm going to go ahead and continue washing and separating my basil leaves, and then I'll be back. I've separated my basil from the stem and put it on paper towels just mainly to carry it over to the stove. Now I'm using two different types of basil. I'm using African blue and serrata. You'll notice that the serrata has a purple tinge to the leaves. African blue basil has a mild flavor, where the serrata has just a little bit of a spice flavor to it. So together they'll make a very good basil oil. Now you can use sweet basil or any of the other basils to make your basil oil, but I prefer using my African blue with just a little serrata. Now we have brought a pot of water to a boil. This is called blanching. What that's going to do is set the color of the leaves. We're only going to blanch it for 10 seconds. And then we're going to put it in an ice bath, and what that does is stops the cooking process. If you blanch it too long, your leaves are going to cook, and that'll darken the color. So we only want to do this for about 10 seconds. The way to do that is just gather your leaves and put them in your boiling water, and then just stir them very quickly. Turn off your burner, and then go ahead and drain. Very quickly, take your hot basil leaves and put them in an ice bath. What an ice bath is just a bowl of water that you fill with ice. You just move your basil around just a little bit. We're stopping the cooking process. Now, as you can see, the basil is very green. It's a bright green. And you can also see that our purple basil didn't do anything except darken the color of the green. So we're not going to have green plus purple. It's still going to be a dark green. Now what we're going to do is take out our basil from the ice bath and put it into paper towels, because we're going to want to go ahead and pat it as dry as we can get it. Now we've taken our blanched and our cold water bathed basil, put it on paper towels. We're going to pat it dry, and now we're going to put it in the blender. And I'm using my Ninja, but you can use just a regular blender or a food processor. We're using grapeseed oil, and you can get this over in the same section with your olive oils. And we're also using an olive oil. Now for this, you'll want to use a finer olive oil, and the reason you'll want to use a finer olive oil is because you're not cooking this. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my grapeseed oil and put the lid on. We're going to blend this until it's very smooth. And now we're going to add our olive oil. And our olive oil that I'm using is actually from a local olive farm called Bella Vista, and it's right outside of Wimberley. Then you're going to put the lid back on. You're going to process this until it's very smooth. This is the consistency. As you can see, we've got it pretty much pureed. And now we're going to pour it in an airtight container and put it in the refrigerator overnight. Tomorrow, we're going to strain it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the refrigerator overnight, and I'll see you tomorrow. We've had our basil oil in the refrigerator overnight, and now we have brought it to room temperature. we're going to go ahead and strain and remove the actual pulp so that all we have is basil oil remaining. What you'll do is take a strainer and put it over a cup, and then now you can use either cheesecloth, or what I do, because they're disposable, is I just use the gauze pads and make sure that it's just the gauze pad. It doesn't have medication on it, or it doesn't have the plastic backing. And then I just put that inside my strainer, and now you'll pour just some of your basil mixture in there, and then take a wooden spoon and just stir it around, and you'll see that the basil oil is going into the glass. We've had our basil oil in the refrigerator overnight, and now we've sat it out on the countertop to get it to room temperature. We're going to strain this in two parts. First, we're going to just run it through a strainer, and then we're going to run it through gauze cloth or your cheesecloth. And the reason we're doing this is because it'll actually get rid of some of your thicker pulp this way, and then when you run it through the gauze cloth, it'll actually just get your precious oil. All you do is you just pour it into the strainer and then stir it around, and you can see that the thicker pulp is staying behind, and you'll discard. So we've strained it once, and as you can see, you still have some of your basil pulp in there. Now what we're going to do is take our gauze cloth, or you can use cheesecloth. I prefer using gauze cloth because it's inexpensive and disposable, and you just get your regular gauze pads that don't have medication, and they don't have the plastic backing. They're just pure gauze pads. Then what you'll do is you'll just take your basil oil and pour it in, and as you can see, we've got just the cloudy basil oil. So now you'll have some of your thicker pulp left in the gauze cloth. All we're trying to do now is just make sure that we get out all of the sediment. Now, as you can see, it is just basil oil. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and put it in an airtight container, and you can store this in the refrigerator for up to a month. And there you have it. I'm Ramona Worston from my Basil Kitchen. This is my fresh basil oil.